Okay, hello. How is everyone doing today? I'm actually just going to try and go live on Facebook as well. So give me a minute while I connect that. So hello, everyone. Welcome to a live today. Hope you are all doing well. Now, one of the common misconceptions higher students have is they think that only foundation students have knowledge gaps and that only those lower level students need to work on the basics, focus on the foundations, um, cover those building blocks. And that couldn't be further from the truth, which is why that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be looking at how to succeed in higher GCSE without overlooking knowledge gaps. I want you to stay tuned to find out why. All right, so my name is Sylvia Browne, and I'm the owner and lead tutor here at the Impact Academy, and we help students achieve grades 7 to 9 in GCSE Maths and Science so they can go to top grammar schools, sixth forms, and colleges. Now, I've been teaching for over a decade, and this is an issue that I have encountered many times from both parents and students. They overlook the fact that knowledge gaps can affect students at any level, not just those in foundation classes or those who are working at a lower grade. So what are we going to focus on today? We're going to look at why higher maths and science students often have unforeseen knowledge gaps. Then we're going to look at how are we going to check if we have a knowledge gap. So if you're a student watching this, what can you do to find out if you have a knowledge gap? If you're a parent watching this, what can your child do to identify any knowledge gaps? And then we're going to look at how we can quickly cover those knowledge gaps. So what are the things that we can do to quickly cover those knowledge gaps? As usual, if you stay till the end, this will take about 10 to 15 minutes. There is going to be a free gift for you that is going to help you implement everything that we talk about today. So let's dive in. The first thing is knowledge gaps can exist at any level, right? So not just at a foundation level, not just at a lower level, knowledge gaps can exist at any level. So if a child is working at a lower level, so perhaps there's a grade 4, then those knowledge gaps tend to be more obvious, right? They tend to have more to cover, more to learn, and there's more that they need to understand to really solidify their knowledge. If a child is working at a higher level, say maybe a grade 6 or a grade 7, they also have knowledge gaps, but it's just that those knowledge gaps present differently. So they might have smaller knowledge gaps. And what I mean by that is that they would probably have less topics that they need to focus on. They would probably have more specific topics, so there might be, depending on their strengths and weaknesses, there might be some areas. So it could be in science, for instance, it could be the maths-based topics if they are not strong with maths, for instance, right? It could be physics if they need to work on equations. So they'll need to focus on specific topics. And they will still have knowledge gaps within the broader topics, but there's just less areas, less patches that will need to be covered. But they still have knowledge gaps, it just presents differently. And that's a very important distinction, very important to know. So imagine then your child, in the summertime now, let's just say your child starts the school year with that confidence. They started school, they're doing well, they're doing good in their tests, their assignments, they're doing well. But then as the school year progresses, they begin to perform less well, right? They begin to struggle with concept, with questions. What that's going to do is it's going to lead to frustration, it's going to lead to self-doubt, anxiety, and in worst case scenarios, that diminished love for learning, right? And that change, that drop in their grades, that drop in how well they're doing, the underlying problem there could be because they have hidden gaps in their knowledge. And that's what we want for higher level students. We want them to identify gaps quickly so they don't fall behind and they don't lose that confidence. So how do you check if you have knowledge gaps? Well, you want to audit your learning. And you can do this in various ways. You can look at the curriculum. So you can look at the specification online. That is the most accurate way to do it, but I typically don't recommend it because a curriculum, like let's just say we take an AQA curriculum, for instance, it's like 150 pages. A lot of these curriculums are like 150 pages. Students already have so many topics, so many subjects to deal with. They don't have time to really look through another curriculum, right? Which is essentially like a subject in itself. It just takes a lot of time. It's very time consuming. So that is accurate, the most accurate, but I actually don't recommend that. There are various other ways that you can audit your learning. So curriculum checklist is one of the ones that I recommend. So they're normally checklists where that already has the key things that the students need to know. And all they need to do is go through it and give it a tick or give it a cross or give it different colors based on where they are, right? And how happy they are with it. They can also review results of previous tests. So when they are getting frequent tests at schools or they're doing mock exams, what are their results like? What kind of things are they struggling with? What are the areas that they haven't done well based on the specific topics? These are the areas that they need to pull out and identify for what they need to focus on. They can also, at home, in their own time, do practice quizzes and tests, right? So by doing practice quizzes and tests, if you've finished a unit, you can, just flick through your book. There are lots of sort of mini tests, mini practice questions that you can do there. And then you can, from doing so, you can start to identify, oh, these are the areas that I'm not good at. So in maths, for instance, you can do, after you've gone through algebra, you can do a test on algebra, and then you can start to pick out, oh, these are the specific areas of algebra that I am struggling with. So auditing learning is the key way to check if you have knowledge gaps. Now you've identified you have knowledge gaps, what do you do? Of course, the next step is you need to cover those knowledge gaps. You do so by learning in a way that is going to help you retain the information and not cramming. So I'm sure many people have heard of this by now, active learning. So when you're using your books rather than, so when you use your textbooks, the curriculum books, that kind of thing, rather than just highlighting or nodding your head as you go along, think about certain things that you can do to really ensure that you've understood. So read it, try and understand it, maybe put it away, and then try and say it out aloud to yourself, for instance, right? Something that just requires a bit more activity, requires a bit more energy. So it's really going to help you retain that information. You can do the same with videos. Using workbooks and past papers are a good method to really cover the gaps in your learning, because it forces you to apply your knowledge. So it really forces you to apply your basically it just really forces you to apply your knowledge when you are looking at test, when you are looking at exam paper, question. You also become more frequently exposed to these questions, and so it's going to help memory retention. And one of my top tips for actively learning is teaching somebody else. So have you opened up your book today and you've learned about photosynthesis? Are you confident that you've understood photosynthesis? All right, now go and teach your mom. Now go and teach your brother or sister. That's a really good way to show that, yes, indeed, you have actually learned and you do understand. Second way to cover those gaps is to space out your learning. And that just means that you want to revise frequently. You want to revise. The key term that we typically use is little and often. When you learn something today, don't put it away until your exams. And a lot of students still make that mistake. You want to come back to it a few days later, a week later, 2 weeks later, and so on and so forth. So you really want to be able to go back to that information often so that it goes into your long-term memory. And a third way that we can cover the gaps in our knowledge, the fancy word for it is to interleave, but it's really just to mix and match what we are learning. So, and there's various ways you can do this. You can mix your subjects, right? You can do a bit of biology today, a bit of chemistry today, a bit of history today, right? A little bit, 20 minutes each. But even within a subject, you can mix and match that. So you can do, you can learn about DNA today, but you could also learn about, which is biology, electrolysis, which is in chemistry. Or learn about the early parts of DNA and then learn about the later parts of DNA. And what that does is it helps to strengthen those connections actually in your nerves across your neurons, and it makes you start to be able to connect the dots between topics, right? Because one of the key things about doing well in exams is you've really got to understand your topics. And a good way to be one of the students who's going to reach the top grades is to be able to actually link the dots between different topics and be able to access those more advanced topics. When you mix and match, it's going to strengthen your understanding, and it's really going to skyrocket your progress. Like I said, it's going to put you ahead of everyone else, because the students who can access the higher level topics, who can really connect the dots and not learn things in isolation, right? Not just learn diffusion, but not be able to understand how it applies elsewhere. They are the ones who are going to achieve the highest grades. So in summary then, knowledge gaps can exist at any level and they may hinder academic progress. So the gaps are different though, depending on the level. So what level the student is. And those gaps can lead to difficulty in understanding advanced concepts and struggles with exam preparation and performance. So we need to identify the gap and cover the gap. We identify the gap by auditing and learning, and there's various methods I've already given you with regards to that. We cover the gap using active learning methods that help us retain information, spacing out our learning, and mixing and matching. And mixing and matching various topics. So what I've done is I've put together a free spreadsheet for you on how you can audit your learning, how you can identify what are the topics that you need to focus on. And this is the exact same spreadsheet that I use with my students that I work with. And they found that really, really helpful to help them improve their grade. So if you're watching on YouTube, that's the link to that spreadsheet will be in the description below. That information should now come up on the screen. If you are watching this on Facebook, just drop the comment gap buster below so that we know you're interested in that spreadsheet, and we'll get that sent off to you. So remember, by understanding concepts deeply, you're really setting yourself up for success in academia. So keep learning and keep growing. And that is all for now. See you later.